beautiful downtown Millheim, in the smack-dab center of the Keystone State. This is Lou Bryson with Seen Through a Glass, the podcast that's mostly about food and drink in central Pennsylvania. Welcome to episode 48, Valentine's Day and such. Well, we missed the holiday episode, and I'm still kind of sad about that, so we're going to do a smaller episode for one of the smaller holidays, Valentine's Day. It's all about love, right? Cupid, St. Valentine. Was there a real St. Valentine? Well, if there was, he lived in the 3rd century AD, so details are doubtful, but the Catholic, Orthodox, and Lutheran churches all recognize him, and that's good enough for me. And St. Valentine's Day is my birthday, so that's doubly good enough for me. Valentine's Day seems to have become a little less happy in the last 30 years. Used to be all candy hearts, school children passing out little paper Valentine cards, dinners out with your sweethearts. It seems to have gotten a bit more competitive, with New Year's Eve-like pressure to have a date. We've seen the huge popularity of Galentine's Day, a women-only festivity where everyone can have a good time, no dates needed. Kind of like the no family needed vibe of Friendsgiving. Well, take it from the birthday boy, there's no pressure on this podcast. We're here to have a good time, have some nice candy, have a drink, and cook with a rural central PA staple. Why candy for Valentine's Day? Well, like a lot of traditions around holidays, it's about the Victorians learning how to sell more stuff. The Cadbury chocolatier family first put chocolates in a heart-shaped box in 1861. We're still buying them. Daniel Chase invented the machine that prints words on candy hearts in 1863, and every year we buy about 8 billion of them. The Hershey's Kiss was invented in 1907, and we all know how popular those are. My grandmother actually used to make them at the factory. So I went to a candy maker, the third we've visited on the podcast, Purity Candy in Allenwood, Pennsylvania. I talked to owner John Burfeindt about their history, what candies they make and how they make them, and learned what their most popular Valentine's Day candy is. That interview's a good one, but it went a bit long, so we're only going to talk about one other thing this time, the big block of frozen haddock that seems to be everywhere in the small towns of central PA. I've been seeing them ever since we started coming up to Millheim in about 2007, and I finally bought one. I cooked up the whole thing at once, and I'll tell you about that. Let's get started. And you know what that means. Here's what I'm drinking today. What I'm drinking today, is the Wonky Donkey Triple from Jackass Brewing Company in Lewisburg. Those of you who know me know that I have not really been a fan of Jackass. I'll admit that. But I was convinced to try this again, and this is pretty decent. For those of you that aren't familiar, a Belgian triple is a style of beer. It's brewed with a specific yeast that creates kind of candy-like citrus flavors. I'm not sure if Wonky Donkey is brewed with it, but triple is often brewed with a small amount of candy sugar, an invert sugar that gives off a particular flavor. And again, that kind of feeds into that whole citrus thing. So this pours nicely. It's got a classic orange gold color. It's got a nice white head of foam on it. Let's give it a try. Orange candy nose there and really pretty, kind of like those orange slice candies. Let's try. Okay. Nice mouthfeel, some buzzy carbonation there. And that can go either way. I mean, I've had triples that were absolutely fizzy. I've had some that were kind of creamy. This one falls, as most of them do, in between those two extremes. The flavor is good. It's clean. It's got that sweet citrus to it, but it still has a little bit of edgy tang to it, which is nice. I don't like getting sticky. The finish is clean and crisp. And, you know, the thing is, it's 9%, 9.8% ABV, and you would never know it. This thing drinks like a 6% beer. what we call dangerously drinkable. I may have to go back and give Jackass another look. This is pretty decent. Nice job. Okay, before we start making candy and thawing out big blocks of fish, it's time for Smack Dab in the Center, sponsored by the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. We're looking at a conveyor belt of winter storms through the month of February. Maybe. I know Penn State's meteorology school is renowned, but I'll believe the whole month of storms thing when I've actually shoveled it. So for now, I'm planning on getting around this month, and what better traveling to do than the Central Pennsylvania Tasting Trail? The Tasting Trail will lead you to 18 members in Center County, wineries, breweries, cideries, and distilleries. Buy the Tasting Trail Passport, either hard copy or the mobile app, for $35. That unlocks $150 worth of offers from the members. If you visit all of them, you'll also get a gift from the Tasting Trail. And don't worry, you've got a whole year from date of purchase to complete it. You don't have to run out and do them all in one weekend. You can find more information about the Central Pennsylvania Tasting Trail under the Eats tab at the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau website, happyvalley.com. Hit the road, with a designated driver, please, in Happy Valley. Over the years, and I do mean years, we've been driving this route since our kids were in baby seats, and they're both over 30 now. I must have driven past Purity Candy at least 100 times. I distinctly remember looking at it and thinking, I should stop there, but, I swear that should be my epitaph. I've thought it so many times about places I've never actually stopped. A demolition derby track in Northern Virginia, a 200-year-old bar outside of Valentine, a bagel place in northern New Jersey. I had Purity on my podcast interview list for over a year. Just didn't get down the list to it. Then 2 months ago, I was in Lewisburg for something else, can't remember, and there's Purity's storefront on Market Street. And I thought, I'll stop. I'll get some candy for Christmas. Wow, I had a hard time keeping it under $100. I just wanted to buy everything. And everyone loved the candies, from the chocolate-covered pretzels to the peanut butter smoothies to the unique crushed peanut and chocolate chill coats. I had to have this interview. So I called Purity, and when I told the woman who answered the phone why I was calling, she put me right through to owner John Burfeindt. Now, I'll mention this in the interview, but I'll say it again here. John said yes faster than anyone else I've ever asked for an interview. Thanks for that. So here's the man from Purity, who does it all by hand, John Burfeindt. Hey, I'm here with John Burfeindt. He's the owner of Purity Candy in Allenwood. How you doing?
Okay.
All right. I wanted to talk to you about Valentine's Day because it's coming up. But before we get to that, tell me some of the history of Purity Candy. Who started it? Where was it originally?
Well, I've done a lot of research on it, and luckily the old owners, since we've been in business so long, have kept a lot of, I have diaries from the original owner they started in 1880-something, and daily diaries. So it was Ford Burchard who started Purity Candy. He was a candy maker in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Oh. And back in the day, he's also an inventor. And back in the day, there was people doing, yep. And there was too many candy makers in Williamsport. One of them being his own brother.
Okay. Oh.
And so he struck out after being, an assistant for many years, and he decided to go try to find something. So he was in Eaglesmere. Found out that was too seasonal. It was a summer place. No one went up there in the winter, especially way back in, you're talking turn of the century, 18 into 1900s. So he traveled on the train a lot. And so what happens is you kind of go to the towns that the train stops in. And so he headed from Williamsport and headed south. And originally in his diary, he said he looked to Sunbury as a place to start it. I guess far enough away, but not too far, not too close. And he couldn't get, I guess, he couldn't find anything down there. Okay. And so he started working back towards Williamsport and ended up in Lewisburg. And he finally found a place there. It was a shack. And it's in the history of Lewisburg. There's a book. it tells you all about the different companies and the history of the whole town and everything. And Purity Candy is kind of a big deal there. So, and it is a ramshackle shack.
Wow.
And that's where it started. He moved a couple times in Lewisburg. There's all kinds of history. That this was our second pandemic that Purity Candy had gotten through. And so we actually went to the diaries and looked to see what they did during the first one.
Okay.
And so we were feeling kind of sorry for ourselves, like all business owners, because we had owned it for all of 6 months before we, and I bought it from my parents. I had been the president of the company for, many years. And
but now you're the owner.
And so,
it's a different thing.
So then we started reading, to see what would go on. And he was talking about having to go down to the train station to pick up his neighbor's dead husband who had died from the pandemic. And because back then, when you're talking, 100 years ago, and so we're like, okay, so we didn't have to do that. So so we're ahead of the game already. And perspective is everything in business and in this, the history of this place definitely helps give you perspective on things.
Yeah.
When you're having a tough time or a tough season or a tough anything, you go back and you know that this has been in business for 118 years, that there was a lot of tough seasons and a lot of tough things, and people made it through.
Yeah, made it through World War II.
Yes. World War II, sugar rationing.
Right.
That was the big deal there. There were some little things they did to help it through that. You just, one of the owners was a navigator in the, B whatever's over Europe, and made it back, said he only made it back. They crash landed once or twice. He only made it back because this pilot was so good. And you just think, and he came back and ran it for 50 years.
Wow.
And so, and then his wife worked for Purity Candy for 75 years. So she worked with the original owner when she was 16. And when she left here, she was 91. And I got most of my history, through the diaries and from her. She actually worked with everybody. Now, he was, the original owner was already old by then, and his son had taken it over. So he would come in and talk. It was kind of like her at the end. She'd come in to help me make candy canes at Christmas, and she just loved talking to the people, and people would always ask,
but she's hand-rolling this stuff at 90.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So there's a lot of history. Even though we haven't owned it the whole time, we feel like we have a connection to the past because of people like Arlene and Buck, who, had worked with the original people and then helped us when we were working here. And she worked with me and told me stories. And so you just realize it's not just this, it's not just, roses and rainbows the whole time.
Both sides.
It's a business, and it's a family business, and it's tough.
And your family took over when?
1984.
Mm-hmm.
So
about why did they sell?
Why did the other people?
The other people sell. Yeah.
So there was a brief time when it was out of the kind of line of the normal fix. Okay. Right. Gotcha. It was Pat, Ford Burchard, sold it to Roy, his son. No one wanted to take it from Roy, but Buck, the one who had been to World War II, he started as what they called the starch monkey in the beginning. You'd come in before school or after school, and you do our creams, and you drop them into cornstarch molds that you make for the different shapes. Mm-hmm. And then when you take them out, you put a mask on, and you dump them out and you brush them, and there's big fans exhausting. This looks like there's smoke coming out of the side of the building when you're brushing those off.
Oh, it's the powdered cornstarch.
It's powdered cornstarch.
Okay.
And then so you have to get them clean, so then you can, so now these things are hardened just enough. They're still squishing your fingers, but they're hardened just enough to keep their shape so we can run them through the machine.
Wow.
And you chocolate coat them, and then, then after a couple of weeks, there's an enzyme in it that, a yeast extract or whatever, and it softens back into a cream. And
wow. Okay.
Right. So he started doing that at a young age. And so then he went to World War II, worked for Roy, managed it, bought it. He and Arlene owned it for a long time. And then this is how we kind of came into it.
That's how it passed. The next generation would buy the company?
And so, so the first two did, and then they didn't have anyone else who wanted to run it. So Buck had been with them so long, and then they would take breaks. They would take breaks to go down to Florida in the winter, and Buck would manage it. And they were testing. You find out later, this was a test to see if he could get it, and he did. He passed the test. He did it, and they finally let him do that, and then sold it to him. And then when Buck was ready to retire, he had a gentleman who was originally from Lewisburg, I think, and his parents. And he came back and fell in love with this little candy store. Unfortunately, he only had it for, I'm not sure, it was 6 or 7 years. I'm not sure. Yeah, five, 6. And he was ready to sell it. Well, it's funny. He and my dad both lived on Long Island. And when he left, he said, I'm going to go buy a candy store in rural Pennsylvania. And my dad was like, wow, really? And so all of a sudden, a couple years later, my dad ends up in Williamsport. And he called up and he said, hey, we want to sell this our store that we bought. Would you be interested? And my mom bought it thinking it would be a great little hobby.
Oh, my gosh.
And so it was funny because, you talk about this lineage of families and stuff. Here was his friend that they grew up with, together on Long Island. And they both end up right here in central Pennsylvania. Yeah. They got it, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
41 years later.
Wow, yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier, and you said your family has now owned it for about a third. Yep. Yeah, so that's not...
Yeah, not insignificant.
Still the new guys, though, I guess. Is that...
I feel that. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was brought in. The candy maker they had hired quit. This is a very tough business to not be the owner, being the candy maker, because you're at the whim of somebody just quitting, like right before busy time. So, going back 35 years, the candy maker was quitting just before Christmas. Our busiest, biggest time. Candy canes, everything.
Yeah.
So my mother called me up. I was going to school for landscaping.
Okay.
And my mother called me up and said, you have to come in and you have to be the candy maker and get me through Christmas. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this business, When they bought it, I told them it would be great that if they wanted to buy it, but I wanted nothing to do with it.
Wow. Okay.
And so she called me up and I said, I would come in at Easter and weigh jelly beans and, help out a little bit on break when you were on break.
Family business.
Yeah. So I came in and it was trial by fire. And I tell people all the time, if we didn't go out of business that year, because I knew nothing.
Come join the family accounting firm in March.
Yeah, right. right. Yeah. And, it's like Buck, the old owner, he started when he was like 16 and, he worked
forever
with the candy maker forever. He saw it being done for years and years. And then, it's like what I do with my people. Then you let them do it a little bit. And then they get a feel for it. And then you do the next thing. But I had no one.
Yeah.
I had no one to teach me.
You just got thrown in the pool.
He was there a week and he said, and he tried to show me everything in a week. This is something that takes, 5 years to learn.
Literally years.
Really, yeah. So that was a little tough. That was when Arlene was there, and she, even though she was never the candy maker, she worked with them all. And she's like, that's not what it's supposed to look like, John. Okay. So you learn, right? And then she would get her husband, Buck, to come in and help me every once in a while. He had already trained like 4 candy makers, so he was kind of tired of it. He didn't think I was going to last. And that's what I found out later. He didn't want to come in and really teach me because he thought I'd be gone in a year or two also. And so 35 years later, I'm still here.
It sounds like you thought that too.
You just, it's there's something about like a family business, a small business that you either are into or not, and it's been fun. This business was much, much smaller when my parents got it. They knew a lot of people. We had just come from Long Island, and they had been in business and, and in different places. And so they had a different perspective on things, the growth, really a growth mindset. And they were, we grew it. We opened up a store in Williamsport because that's where we were from. So now we had 2, and then moved it again, and then it closed. Wegmans approached us and said, "Would you like to be in Wegmans?" And we said, "Sure."
Wow!
And so that is kind of become our Williamsport store now. That's our location there. Yeah. Although it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes over the mountain, you can be here. Right. We tried to expand a little bit into the State College area, but that's where we started getting from the customers a little resistance from the Gardeners people, right? Yeah, because that's their place over there, and so in the State College area. So it's really, we learned growth has to be organic, and you can't really jump to another location and be that they don't know you. So we've been working on that organic growth, and one of the biggest things we found is that people in Williamsport, people right across the river here in Milton, what's Purity Candy?
Wow.
We've been in business 120 years right here. Yeah. So our mission lately has been to let people know through our social media that you've seen some, because there's all these
your Facebook
candy videos of all these other places all over, getting all these huge amount of hits and stuff on their stuff. And we're trying to show people that you have that right in your backyard here. And you don't have to watch it on a video. Right. You can just come up here, park in the parking lot, walk in and look through the windows and see it all being done right here.
The windows are great.
Right. And so you keep thinking big picture, and then it keeps coming back to like smaller picture, and you realize that you've got to really saturate your own little market here first before you can move out. Yeah. And it's really been fun. It's been good. And one of our biggest compliments that we get is people that will drive by and say, "I've been driving by this place for 30 years, and I've never stopped in because I didn't know really what it was. It's Purity Candy." You don't know. And then they come in and they go, "This is wonderful. We should have stopped,
years ago.
10 years ago." Yeah. So, we work on that, and it's been a lot of fun, and meeting people and the customers. That's a fun part of it.
Okay. Why Ellenwood? I mean, you moved up the road.
Right. So we were in Lewisburg, and once again, with the growth mindset that we had, the old place was very small.
Boxed in.
Yeah. And so they had moved from Market Street in Lewisburg during the Great Depression. They moved to a side street, North 8th Street in Lewisburg, where they were for many years. Due to the economic conditions and stuff, they just couldn't afford the rent and the lease on Market Street and stuff. So they decided to build their own factory and own it, and also live next door to it. So that was Roy, the second owner. Okay. And they were there with my parents, growing and growing. We were kind of landlocked right there. It was a residential neighborhood. And we had like a little tiny 4-person parking lot in the back. There really wasn't a whole lot of place for people to park. It was so small, in fact, that one of the things when we moved in, there was a tube next to the desk upstairs. It was an old roll top desk that we have out in the store now, a display with peanut brittle on it and stuff. Okay. At night, when Arlene, the lady who worked here for 75 years, she would come over. She lived around the corner. She would come in and wrap caramels, they would cut the caramels into scraps. She would wrap them by hand at night, and just little tasks like that. Right. And when a customer would come in, they were up until like 9 o'clock at night.
Oh my gosh.
When a customer would come in, she would go up to the tube right next to the desk and talk into it and say, "Mr. and Mrs. Burchard, you have a customer." That tube went down in the basement, and we could follow it down in our basement through a tunnel into their living room next door and up into the living room. And that tells you a lot about Purity Candy right there. Wow. It was a lot of inventors, a lot of ingenious stuff going on. And so then they would come over, because I didn't realize this, the cash registers that were made, we have one of the old cash registers.
I saw it.
And in researching it, you find out that these were all done to stop people from stealing your money, like your own employees. Like, they didn't trust your own employees. So Arlene apparently was not allowed to touch the cash register at the time. Now, she ends up owning the place, right, with her husband, but not allowed to touch it, so you have to summon them from their living room
so they can work the register.
So they can come over next door. So anyway, that's how small that place was.
Okay.
So when my parents were growing, they needed a place.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was kind of like when Pap went out looking around. You go out and you see what's out there. They found this place that recently closed. It was an old fabric shop.
Oh, okay.
And my parents liked it. They liked the fact that it was like on a highway.
It does. It looks like a dry goods store from the road. Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, I think we can do some additions and things and make it work. And they did. And it worked out really well. Lewisburg. So, and then what we did was we didn't want to leave Lewisburg totally. So instead of, we moved the manufacturing here. And then we said, well, if we're going to manufacture here, and we're going to have people here anyway. I don't know, people have always been, the people who worked on the machine were always the people that, when it was Christmas time, they'd go up and help in the store too.
Oh, okay.
So you have the people here making it, they can work the store. So we put a store in the front, the factory store.
Sure.
And we still wanted to keep our place in Lewisburg, so we moved back onto Market Street, which
is that the
both
store
moves, yes, and both moves were fantastic for us.
That's a beautiful spot.
This place captures travelers. That place captures the people who've been buying it for 100 and, 20 years. So it worked out very well.
That's great. So the one more history, why purity? Because I got to admit, we've used, at some point we thought, what did it just make sugar-free candy?
Right.
Or?
So there's a bunch of different things. Talking to Buck and Arlene about it, he was Ford, who started it, Pap, he was a very religious man. Very religious. He was part of the against alcohol. They were against alcohol.
The temperance movement.
The temperance movement.
Yeah.
So he was very much into that.
Wow.
Went to church all the time. During the week, on the weekends, everything, and it had something to do with that whole him his religious background or whatever. That's the only thing I can kind of figure from it. Now there's a place in New York, I guess it's an ice cream place. Oh. Purity ice cream. People stop here and a lot of times coming from New York and they'll be like, oh, can I get some ice cream? And we're like, oh, wrong place. And we know that now. And there was another place farther down south. I think that was Purity Bakery. So there was something, I'm not sure what the love of that name was, or the origins of it, for a bakery and an ice cream shop and a candy shop, but works for us.
Yeah. So just going off my script here, saying we talked about people me driving past for literally years.
Yeah.
How do you stop them?
Well, our marquee.
Okay.
Interesting things on it. Lately, it's been using some of the social media tools. You can geofence and do things where you can get people and if they come into the area, it can. And we found that out from some companies that we used first. Okay. This year we did some TV ads on the news and stuff, and we're trying some different things. But what we do find is once they come in they really like it. It's you don't really know what it is when you're driving by. It's kind of a nondescript building. But when you come in, people are nice. It's a cool vibe. So yeah.
You're I got, just for myself, you're pretty quick in the uptake. That was the fastest yes I ever got to an interview request. So thank you for that. You do a lot of the enrobed candies, chocolate-covered pretzels, chocolate-covered cookies, nuts, animal crackers. You do a chocolate-covered peanut butter cracker, like literally saltines with peanut butter on it, which I've never seen anywhere else. Okay. Would you call that a specialty? Is that a thing you love to do?
Well, the chocolate-covered pretzels, that's insane. We had talked that we get them down from, we are in Pennsylvania, the snack capital of the world, So if you need pretzels or potato chips,
we're the place.
They are crazy.
And you say you get them from Sturgis
and
Reading?
We get them from Tom Sturgis, yeah. The other things, people chocolate coat animal crackers and stuff, which are surprisingly good. They stay really crunchy. They're very
Animal
good.
crackers are overlooked.
Right, yeah.
They're very good cooks.
Yeah, you and my wife are on the same page there. And then the chocolate, the peanut butter cracker was a funny thing. There was a doctor who worked in Geisinger. Mm-hmm. And he would come to the Lewisburg store, and then he would come here afterwards after they told him, well, you're going to have to go talk to the people at the factory. He goes, I used to be a doctor in Florida, and one of the candy companies down there did this thing, and it was 2 saltines with peanut butter chocolate coated. He goes, would you do that for me? And I'm like, and I thought to myself, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Right? Who the hell wants a saltine?
I thought that when I first saw it, and the more I thought about it, I'm just like, I gotta have that.
Who wants a saltine with peanut butter? Wouldn't it be better with Ritz? And wouldn't it be better with this? And wouldn't it be better? So we just did it. Then we're in the Geisinger gift shop, and we do very well there with all the doctors and stuff, And we thought it was all the patients and whatever buying it and the people for bringing the patients. No, it's doctors, all, small packs like,
Right.
And so all of a sudden we started selling those there. He told somebody there, and they're like, oh, can we start carrying those in the store? And we're like, okay, whatever. I mean, how many can we possibly make? Wow. And they have taken off. We sell those in Wegmans. They're one of our biggest sellers there.
I'm sure if you get into Geisinger, it goes everywhere.
And it does. It's just, it's been crazy. And it's one of those things.
They must employ like 20% of the
county. A guy just came and asked if we could do this, something he liked down in another place. And it's like, okay. And who knew? Who knew? Certainly not I.
So another question that just pops up, the enrobing. Okay, It's going on a conveyor belt and it's getting chocolate. How does it get on the bottom?
It starts on the bottom.
Okay.
You start at the beginning, and there's a wire belt that brings chocolate up on this wire belt, and you put the things on it. It goes across that, and then the first 10-foot belt is a refrigerated bottom.
Oh,
so then the bottoms harden up. And then it goes under the enrober, the curtain, and then gets the top and also more on the bottom. Okay. And it goes over that and then goes up and then through the big tunnel to the back.
Okay. Which is why the bottom's flat.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Somebody asked about the chill coats.
Right.
Which I've never seen anywhere else. Could you explain what that is?
A chill coat. I still don't know. We have no idea where the name came from.
Oh, okay.
It is one of our most popular products as well. One of our, so we roast our own Spanish peanuts.
Right.
A little extra dark.
Love Spanish peanuts.
Yep. Grind them up through a meat grinder.
Oh, okay.
And add salt to it, add chocolate, and then you
That's it.
Mold it. We used to do it by hand with a spoon and a little handmade little thing. There used to be 4 women there, and we doing it, and you could not keep up. The Christmas came, and you'd make them. They'd take 3 days making them, and they'd be sold in a day. And then you couldn't keep up. So now I use one of our other machines. We do the same recipe, and I pump it out, and I can pump it out like 36 of them at a time every 10 seconds. And then we let them harden in the refrigerator and then pack them into boxes. And
I got to say that the whole thing, I looked at that. I've always liked the Mr. Goodbar from Hershey. And the first time I had a choke on, I'm like,
yes,
it's like that, but it's good.
Right.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was intrigued by the pictures of barks and brittles on your Facebook page. You're doing them on a marble table? Is that what that is?
Well, the brittles are on a marble table.
What's the difference?
So our bark is done with chocolate.
Okay.
So you can have inclusions in it. Marshmallow, nuts, Rice Krispies, coconut. It's super thin. Mm-hmm. And we mix it up, put it in a pan, refrigerate it, take it out, break it into pieces, and put it in there. That would be a bark. Your brittle is, we do cashew, peanut. We used to do a pumpkin seed brittle, but no one really dug that one.
Well, you gotta try.
And then we do the black walnut brittle. Yeah, and those are hard candies.
Okay,
that are usually softened with a little bit of
caramel.
Something? it's sugar and corn syrup cooked up. It gets a little dark when we cook the peanuts in it and stuff, the oils, and then we soften it with a little bit of the baking soda that goes into it, and it puffs it up and puts a little bit of air into it all over, so that when you bite it, it's not just like biting into a lollipop, a solid. It's a little aerated, and it kind of crushes in between your teeth.
Okay, but that's the thing you pour out.
That we take that over to the marble. We pour it out, spread it out with spatulas. We wear insulated gloves with big rubber gloves over it.
Oh, right, because it's hot.
Oh, it's super hot.
Yeah,
it's hot when you pour it out. And then we have a technique where we pull it out and thin it and get it nice and thin. We like to have it like 1 peanut thick, with a little...
You say you roast your own nuts.
Right.
Has that always been a thing? Is that
right.
something? Yeah.
Yeah, we have an ancient nut roaster out here, a gas-fired roaster drum that rotates, and we had some other smaller candy makers from the Philly area, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. They came in. They had requested to come and take a tour. They do that around and just try to see people, networking opportunities.
Sure.
And he came here and we walked out there and they're like, "Oh, I recognize that nut roaster." And because if you're an old candy company, you have that. You can't find it anymore.
Yeah.
But they're like, "Oh, we recognize that." And
there's a type of grain mill in the Scotch distilleries, the Porteous Mill. Guys will buy a 110-year-old mill instead of a new one because they're just so well made.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone wants it.
Yep.
Yeah. I do see a lot of, speaking of old stuff, I see a lot of, old-timey candies here. Sassafras lollipops, the tea-berry hearts, wintergreen. Somebody was raving. I put out on Facebook just a call, I'm going to go interview these guys. Do you have any questions? Somebody went crazy talking about wintergreen mints and wintergreen nonpareils, maybe? Or is that...
Wintergreen, I'm trying to think. We do the wintergreen mints. It's we do a peppermint patty.
Okay.
And a wintergreen patty.
That's probably what.
So that is. Okay. It's pink. The cream is pink, and it's flat. Yeah. Those are big sellers.
But you don't see them anywhere else. These flavors have gone out of.
Right.
So what's
sassafras is definitely if you've been to Lewisburg, you realize that's kind of even though it's the home of Bucknell and everything, it's
still an enclave.
It's still a little, just a step back in time, kind of, and that's what we like about it.
Yeah.
You go 10 blocks in any direction, and you got your Kentucky Fried Chickens and everything out there. But Market Street is a really cool,
just the storefronts and the architecture, you can see it.
And so we really try to, harken back to the old days with that, with our stuff. Anyone can make sour raspberry things, or all the new, the new stuff you buy in the CVS stores, and all that. So we try to really do the historical flavors, and we seem to do very well with it.
Yeah.
So
I would assume there's a lot of nostalgia. I mean, that's what keeps the Vermont Country Store open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we, back in the old days, no one really moved, right? So your home candy store, you get used to it, but these days, people just scatter to the four winds all the time. Somebody goes to college in Iowa and they stay, then. But one thing is, we have a lot of people that, especially now that we, with email and websites and stuff, they get back to us and they say, "When I grew up, there was this one candy that we used to get, and do you still have it and make it?" Yes, we do.
Is there one of those that stands out that they ask for the most?
Chilcoats are straws, which are hard candy filled with chocolate or peanut butter, which other companies do in like a mass-produced kind of thing. We still do it by hand. They're,
of course you do.
Expensive and, and it's crazy. But it's just something that people are like our candy canes. Our handmade candy canes. I mean, now those are, we make an incredibly
I got to be honest, the first time I went in, I looked at the prices and I'm like, really? And that just disappeared as soon as I put the first candy in my mouth.
Right. But also, if you come here during Christmas and you see us making it, it's, there's, when we do lollipops, there's 6 people that I pull out of the factory to come over to do, and it takes 15, 20 minutes, to do that. But it's
that video
it's very involved.
Of the heart, cutting the hearts for the lollipops. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, the hearts, the hatchets. And like with the candy canes, depending on what sizes you're making and flavors. I mean, we do like 14 flavors of candy canes, and we keep it rolling, for a month and a half here of making them, and so that's it gets tougher and tougher every year as we get bigger.
So we are coming into the holidays. We're coming into Valentine's Day. That's why I'm here. Where does that come in the candymaker's calendar? First, second, third?
Christmas is by far number
one.
Easter is number 2.
Okay.
I'd say Valentine's Day and like from October through Thanksgiving is about equal.
Okay.
That's big. Any time that families get together is big for us.
Yeah.
You know, people are traveling, they're going to grandma's, Aunt Judy's, whatever, and they want to stop and bring something that everyone likes. Those are good for us. So Valentine's Day is important. It has turned from a holiday of the chocolates and the hearts with some of those ugly, god awful hearts,
which you still have, because I assume some people still
which we don't really get the gaudy gross ones with the big plastic rose on it.
You just have a plain
the paper ones, that say Happy Valentine's Day or To My Valentine. Those still sell, and but it's all chocolate covered strawberries now.
I saw those. Yeah,
that's got to be 50 or 60% of our Valentine sales.
Okay, wow.
And now
I didn't realize
every grocery store and everyone does them too.
Yeah,
but you can come here and watch them. You can watch them there too. But there's just something about going to the store and going in and checking it out.
Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, a good one's really good. Yeah. Another old-timey, the curled ribbon candy. I've never seen that anywhere else.
So our founder, Pap and Ford Burchard, was an inventor. And he has actually, we have them a couple of patents. Way back in like late 1800s. And so we have this machine, or called curl. So we make our ribbon candy instead of doing it like people see, like the ribbons.
Yeah.
There's a machine with a bar, and you hit a brake and you put the ribbon in there, you let it go, and it spins around the bar. And then we have a thing where you take it, you pull the bar out of it, and it stays in a tube. And then we mix them up and break them up, and I think we have videos of that also online of making it and of mixing them and stuff. And that was just him trying to come up with a different way of doing something. And so we were talking about the old grain roaster or whatever you said, and our nut roaster. A lot of the stuff we have is that hasn't been made in 75 years. From a place called Thomas Mills Brothers. Used to be in Philadelphia. They made all confectionery candy tables, water-filled tables. We still have. You can fill them with hot or cold to do whatever you need, and all the stuff. They made this machine for him. It's in the casting of the metal, and it says Thomas Mills Brothers, and it says F. Burchard, patent pending, on the other side, down the thing.
That's incredible.
So I think it's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
And I mean, he invented it or whatever, so I don't think it was ever mass produced, because no one has ever seen anything like it. So every year we try to be very careful with it. We don't want to,
I mean, it's iron, but still. So. Another one I saw on their old, speaking of molds, the clear toy molds.
Right. We do have some old clear toy molds. We do not use them. We display them.
Okay.
The ones I have were made like 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And we got them from, of all places, Williams-Sonoma. And what they are is old, like, the same you would get, except they're Teflon coated.
Oh, that's better.
So now we can use less oil.
Yeah.
Because that would be your release agent. You'd spray the molds each side, put it together, and then pour the candy in, and then pry them out. And so now they come out a lot easier.
Pop out.
And same
old shapes,
same kind of thing. It's still a cast, a big heavy cast metal. But with the Teflon, a little bit. And I don't know if it's actually Teflon. It's enamel, something that
easy release.
Yes.
Yeah. That's an old thing.
That is an old thing.
Clear toys. Yes.
That is a really old thing. There used to be a place across the river that an old gentleman in a house, he had like a little place, and he would sell them to all the local stores. He had ones that were trains that were like
Oh,
5 pounds, and it would take like a day to cool, because if it cools too quickly they crack and all this stuff.
Oh man!
And when he was going out of business, he was selling his molds, and I think it was a lot of collectors were trying to get them, like not producers,
Right?
And so they were paying too much, so we were just like, that's okay. The cool ones,
Yeah.
the little ones, everyone's got the little, but the big trains or big things, that was pretty neat. And it was definitely an art. And I went to go see him once, and that was. If you're going to do that full time, that you got to do that full time.
Yeah.
We do it as a side thing,
Uh-huh.
just to keep the tradition going, keep that old fashioned.
When I was growing up, there was a woman at our church that just,
Yeah.
did it for. She had a big Christmas party every year, and she would make clear toys for, I think, like a month and a half before. And I still remember that.
There is a lot of labor involved in it.
Oh,
so
my
that's
gosh.
the thing. Yeah.
Tell me, we already mentioned this briefly, tea-berry.
Right.
An extremely Pennsylvania flavor.
It really is. There used to be the little red nonpareil type things that were the tea berries.
Yeah.
They don't make them anymore. When we contacted the manufacturers and stuff, they said no one buys them. It really is like a Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah.
The flavor.
Yeah.
And so wintergreen is derived from the leaves of the wintergreen plant, which grows in the woods. Tea berry supposedly is from the berry of the plant, the little red berry of the wintergreen plant.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much tastes like wintergreen. It's a little sweeter. Yeah. It's not quite as astringent as the wintergreen, which you would think coming from a green leaf, it would be a little more bitter or whatever. And so they stopped making it. So finally, one of the flavoring companies I use had a tea berry, new, and I was like, people, because we always they call up, can we get those things anymore? You cannot. And they used to make these little pink lozenges.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so people keep calling. So I was like, well, let's see what we can do with tea berry. So this year we did it, and it just blew up. So
there's a place down in Sunbury has tea-berry infused vodka.
Oh, okay, you're right. Yeah. Now tea-berry ice cream.
Tea-berry ice cream, sure,
is still a big deal.
There was one place we used to live down in Bucks County, and there was one place I could go that had tea-berry ice cream, and I went there all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just try to, where there's a vacuum, you try to
move it to right. That's getting close to. Is there anything I missed that I should have asked?
I don't know. There's so much.
We briefly mentioned mail order. You have, we still call it mail order, but online ordering.
Right.
You've got a fairly robust...
puritycandy.com.
Yeah.
And not everything that we make, we try to tell people that is on the website. Only because when you're packaging up fragile stuff, it's very hard. So not everything really lends itself to being shipped, to...
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to disappoint
somebody
people.
in California and stuff, and hot weather, and it gets a little difficult. We do our best, and if you can also, we actually are one of the people that you can call, and real people answer the phone, say hello, Purity Candy, and you're talking to the people who make it,
I can vouch for that,
right in the back,
Right.
and so they'll tell you, we can do that, or we can pack this, or you can ask, is there the person I like kind of likes nuts with this and that, or do you have anything like that? And we can talk to you. So it's not everything is phone menu and and AI. So if you want to talk to a real person, you give us a call, either store.
All right. You can see the candy made here. You can buy the candy in Lewisburg. Days of operation?
Most weeks, Monday through Saturday.
Okay.
When you get towards any of the major holidays, we're open 7 days a week.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
And as we have mentioned, you got a pretty good Facebook page, so more information there. All right, John. Thanks very much. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it as well.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Hey, do yourself a favor. The next time you're on Route 15 between Lewisburg and Williamsport, and you see that Purity Candy sign in front of that low building that looks like it could be a dry goods store, don't drive by. Stop in. Watch them make it through the windows. Try some of that delicious old-timey candy. You'll be hooked. That's not the only attraction along that stretch of road either. South of Purity Candy, there's the little White Deer Railroad Museum, right along the tracks on the other side of Route 15 from the little town of White Deer. They're only open on Sunday afternoons, but you can always drive back and take a look around. North of Purity Candy, on the other side of the road, is the literally world-famous Clyde Peeling's Reptile Land. This is an accredited zoo that has specialized in reptiles and amphibians, snakes, lizards, alligators, frogs, and turtles of all sizes, including some really tiny ones and some really huge ones. They have a parakeet display as well. There's a solid educational component with lectures and talks about the animals and about properly caring for reptiles. And yes, there are totally dangerous venomous snakes, but they're all safely behind thick glass. It's a cool place. I think I might need to go back. There's another nearby attraction that I visited for my first time on the way home from Purity, the Bunkers of Elvira. They're off Route 44, northwest of Allenwood. Back in 1942, the Army claimed the little town of Elvira by eminent domain, razed it, and built 149 concrete bunkers for storing TNT, with railroad sidings for each row of bunkers. By 1944, they realized they had overestimated the need for explosive storage, which is hard to believe in World War II, but it's true, and they largely abandoned the facility. The rail lines were torn up, the bunkers were emptied. Eventually, the land wound up in the hands of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And in an amazing act of stewardship, they have not only left the bunkers in place, sealed up mostly, but not all, they kept the rail paths clear and encouraged wildlife to return to the area. Friends tell me it's a great place for bird watching. Well, yeah, I just found it cool to walk around the place, and yeah, I went into one of the bunkers. It was full of junk and some pretty cool graffiti. It's worth a run out there, especially if you're checking things off on Atlas Obscura. If you're not familiar with Atlas Obscura, it's a whole website of weird, cool places to go around the world, and there are a lot of them in Pennsylvania. You should have a look. And now for something completely different, the 5-pound box of frozen haddock. Now, I never saw these until I moved to Central PA. They're exactly what they say they are, a cardboard box filled with 5 pounds of frozen haddock fillets. Every box is exactly full. Every box has 6 bricks of fish in a plastic bag. So if you're so inclined, you can pry 1 or 2 off for a dinner and put the rest back in the freezer. Well, what's the big deal about that, you ask? A box of frozen fish? Well, ever since I've been coming to Central PA on the regular, about 15 years before we actually moved here in 2021, I've been seeing signs along the road about these boxes. You see, there's these little independent butcher shops and small grocery stores scattered all along the back roads of Union, Snyder, Center, and Perry counties, or at least there were. I know of 3 that have closed in the past 5 years, mostly just guys getting old and retiring and no one wants to buy the business, which is too bad. But the stores would advertise things like loins of pork, London broil, our own sausage, and then the constant 5 pounds frozen haddock with the price. And eventually I started to wonder, why were people hooked on this fish? Was it just an economical meal? And my State College and Williamsport friends were baffled. Where are you seeing this? It was a strictly rural thing, I learned. So I asked on Facebook, and here are some responses from 2 people who live not that far away from me. Tammy Harrington said, I grew up in Central PA, as my parents did. The 5-pound box of rectangle fish was always a huge treat. Back in the day, seafood was pretty hard to find here, and I think it was easy to ship, store, etc., and maintain some type of quality. You can do 2 things with these fish blocks. Cut them into squares, dredge in flour and pan fry, or grind them up with celery, onion, and saltines and deep fry them to make fish balls. If you're feeling frisky, you can add red pepper flakes to the fish ball mix. Tammy also responded to another person who was giving cooking advice and said, separating the fillets is illegal. Pretty sure that was tongue-in-cheek. Charlie Boyer, a local character and fellow beer connoisseur, was also of the chunk and fry school on the box fish. As a local lifer, I don't recall any time with the 5-pound box being unavailable. Another perk, you buy 5 pounds, you're eating 5 pounds. No waste. My favorite way, of course, is to take a brick or two, cut them into 6 pieces each, bread, and fry. Holy hell, that's some good eating. So I'd been planning to get a box, but I was just not sure what to do with it. Then my wife's 3 brothers, Chris, Kurt, and Carl, along with our sisters-in-law, Katie and Joan, decided they should all visit us this past weekend. There's a recipe in our family cookbook. Really, I wrote a family cookbook about 10 years ago. They're bound paperbacks. They're pretty nice. It's a recipe for fish chowder that my mother-in-law, Claire Childs, used to make on winter weekends when we'd get together at their home. And I thought, that's a perfect project for the box of haddock. So I got a box from Burkholder's Market here in Millheim, where I get a lot of my supplies for these cooking experiments. It was indeed 5 pounds of haddock fillets, the Icy Ocean brand from Direct Source Seafood in Bellevue, Washington. The haddock is packed in China, so honestly I was a bit wary, but I took it home, along with a bag of Argentinian red shrimp, a bag of bay scallops, 6 cans of chopped clams, and 6 bottles of clam juice. The day before the brothers were coming for dinner, I put the frozen fish and shrimp and scallops in the refrigerator to thaw. The next day, about 2:30, I shelled the shrimp and put the shells in a saucepan with about 1.5 quarts of water, some onion powder, peppercorns, and red pepper flakes. I brought it to a boil, knocked it back to a fast simmer, let it go for 20 minutes. Then I ripped open the box. It was a solid block still, not fully thawed, but that just made it easier to cut once I got the bricks pulled apart and the bags off. I chopped each brick into 1.5-inch cubes of fish, maybe 16 to the brick. The fish smelled good, and it was clean, no bones, no skin, nothing nasty at all. Just like Charlie said, 5 pounds, no waste. I drained the broth off the shrimp shells into a 20-quart pot and added the clam juice and chopped clams with their liquid. After I turned the burner up to medium-high, I added 2 large chopped onions, 5 chopped potatoes, and about 8 slices of bacon that I'd already fried, drained, and crumbled. I stirred all that together, added a good amount of black pepper and a teaspoon of kosher salt, then dumped in the haddock. I brought it all to a boil and dropped it back to medium heat, just enough to keep it gently boiling, and left it like that for half an hour. The brothers had started to arrive, and I got their juices flowing with another of the family recipes from the book, Lulu paste. Lulu paste is a homemade cheese ball made from Kraft Old English cold-packed cheese, some Roquefort, a finely diced small onion, and Worcestershire sauce, smashed together, rolled into a ball, and refrigerated overnight, except, well, I couldn't be bothered to roll it. I just chilled it in a steel mixing bowl and put it out with hard pretzels. No one seemed to mind. When the chowder had cooked for about an hour, I put the shrimp and scallops in. After they'd cooked for another 10 minutes, I stirred in a cup of half and half, sliced up some of Cathy's good homemade bread, and declared it all ready. My friends, it was delicious. Some of the haddock had come apart and thickened the chowder, some had stayed in nice meaty chunks. The red shrimp was aromatic, the scallops were tender. All hail the 5-pound box of frozen haddock. Just a bit more food. I think I mentioned Burns Night in the last episode, and we had our celebration with our wine club and our whiskey group. It was grand. We had haggis with proper HP sauce, smoked salmon. Cathy made some very authentic and tasty oat cakes. We had 2 different kinds of neeps and tatties, boiled and roasted turnips and potatoes, an exceptional pot roast for those who were afeared of the haggis, and a cockaliki soup that I made. First time, and it came out quite nicely. I'll have to do that again. We had shortbread for dessert, and enough Scotch whiskey to loosen us up for the poetry recitations that make up a necessary part of Burns Night. I might post some pictures for you. Just one quick note about an event next week, and then another in 2 weeks. Do you remember me telling you earlier about the Central Pennsylvania Tasting Trail? Well, they're having their annual Valentine's Day party at University Wine Company on Wednesday, February 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. Get your $10 tickets, plural, you got to bring your girlfriends, at the Tasting Trail website now. Wine, snacks, a DJ, and gifts. Then on Sunday, February 23rd, my hometown brew pub, Elk Creek Cafe and Ale Works in beautiful downtown Millheim, has their only annual beer event, the Day of Delicious Darkness, a celebration of the dark side of beer. 8 dark beers from Elk Creek's own taps, including 3 rare barrel-aged beauties, plus 2 more barrel-aged behemoths from brewers trained by Elk Creek's own Tim Yarrington, an Axeman Baltic Porter, and a Clarion River Imperial Stout. There are 2 sessions at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and you'll want to get tickets. This is the only time you'll see people lined up to get into a place in Millheim. I'll see you there. That's the show. My thanks to John Burfeindt for the interview, and to my wife's family for being so gosh darn hungry. You can find pictures for this episode on Instagram at Stag Podcast and on Facebook at Seen Through a Glass. If you're listening to the show on the radio at WSOV, there are over 40 more episodes to enjoy, including a Millheim episode and a Nittany Valley episode at seenthroughaGlass.podbean.com. That's Podbean, PODBEAN.com. Or you can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to toss a bit in my hat to keep the show going, I have a coffee button in my Instagram link tree, that's at Stag Podcast, and on the Facebook page. Thank you. You know, every state has some odd town names. Here are some of my favorites in Pennsylvania. Turnip Hole is in Clarion County, between Clarion and Foxburg. Moon Township is by the Pittsburgh Airport, named for a crescent moon-shaped bend in the Ohio River. Burnt Cabins is in Fulton County, named for settlers' cabins that were burnt by the British in the 1740s to satisfy Native American protests. Nantiglow is in Cambria County, a Welsh name meaning Valley of Coal. But my favorite might be Forty Fort in Luzerne County. The name's a relic of the Yankee Pennamite Wars, fought between Pennsylvania and Connecticut over land claims in the Wyoming Valley. The actual stockade, the 40 Fort, was built and manned by 40 Yankee settlers in 1770. They fought some skirmishes with Pennsylvania militiamen, and the war wasn't fully settled until 1799. Well, what's coming up? I'm still working on that Bald Birds Brewing interview in Jersey Shore, so fingers crossed on that. But I'm also maybe getting an interview with an apple grower. We'll see what happens there. We've also got that landmark episode number 50 coming up in a month. I'll have to see what I can come up with for that. Until then, thanks for listening. This is Lou Bryson with Seen Through a Glass from the smack dab center of the Keystone State.